In today's lecture, we are going to study one of the partisan novels, Azadi, written by Chaman Nahal. When I say that it is a partisan novel, it means it describes the agonies and sufferings of the partition of India in two nations, namely India and Pakistan in 1947. The writer was born on 2nd August 1927. He passed away on 29th November 2013. There are other partisan novels which I would name, that is Train to Pakistan, written by Khushwant Singh, Midnight Children by Salman Rushdie, Cracking India by Bapal Sidhwa, and Sunlight on Broken Column by Atiyah Hussain. These are the major partisan novels. And Chaman Nahal wrote many novels, and these novels are My True Faces, that was published in 1973. Azadi came in 1975. Into Another Dawn, that was published in 1977. The English Queen was published in 1979. The Crown and the Loincloth was published in 1981. The Sunrise in Fiji was appeared in 1988. The Salt of Life was published in 1990. The Triumph of Color, 1992. He has described the Gandhian period in his novels, and we can say that he compromises the Gandhian period in his four novels, namely The Crown and the Loincloth, second, The Salt of Life, third, The Triumph of Tricolor, and Azadi. And Azadi is one of the novels that brought Sahitya Academy Award to Nahal. In this novel, the writer delineates the culture and social problems of India. Azadi is about the dawn of freedom, the partition and its aftermath. We read about brutal murders, merciless massacres, cruel rapes, burning and looting of properties. One could feel horrified. It depicts the ugly events which cause havoc in the lives of the people. There are major characters in the novel. Lala Kashiram, he is the protagonist of the novel. Arun is the only son of Lala. Noor is the beloved of Arun. Inayatullah Khan is the Muslim city inspector. Rahmatullah Khan, the classmate of Arun. And there are two important places where the story takes place. These places are Sialkot and Narowal. You see, after the partition, there is a large scale of migration of people from both sides of the border between India and Pakistan. The story of the novel begins with the announcement of partition on 3rd June 1947 by the cabinet mission, and the novel ends with the death of Gandhi on 30th January on 1948. The novel covers the span of 8 months. The novel is divided into three parts: the lull, storm, and aftermath. In lull, the author portrays the silent atmosphere before the announcement of the partition, how the people were living amicably and in friendship manner. The storm describes the horrifying story of merciful killings of Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs. Aftermath portrays the assassination of Gandhi and sufferings of the people. The writer was inspired to write this novel from his personal experience of having lived in Sialkot at the time of partition. He himself acknowledges the autobiographical nature of Azadi by calling it, I quote, a hymn to one's place of birth rather than a realistic novel of partition, unquote. He wants to say that it is not a historical novel, it is only realistic details what happens at Sialkot at the time of the partition. Like Khushwant Singh, He himself witnessed the atrocities committed on the minorities after the announcement of the partition. The novel begins with the announcement of the partition of Indian subcontinent in two nations, namely India and Pakistan. Muslims celebrate this news. They believe that they are going to have a new country. They believe they are going to have a heaven country. They think that the creation of Pakistan will bring them a new life, and they hope for great change in their life. On the other hand, Nehru fails to win the sympathy of the people and the Indian people have taken him as a brilliant leader, a very proud leader. But the people started to say when the announcement came that he had gone mad, they did not know his people. The people were unhappy about the role of Nehruji at the time of partition. The communal violence breaks out both sides of border. Hindus and Sikhs are targeted in the Muslim-dominated Pakistan, and Muslims are targeted in the Hindu-dominated areas. The writer narrates the brutality of the act thus, I quote, "The killing was invariably done with a knife, often the knife, a large blade driven clean through, was left in the body of the victim. Where the victim survived the first blow, he was repeatedly stabbed in the chest and abdomen. Faces were not disfigured." Unquote. In see in what manner the Muslims stabbed the Hindus. A big knife with big blade and repeatedly stabbed on the chest till death. And the faces were not disfigured because the people could know that it is a Hindu face. In that manner, that was the scene of brutality at the time of partition at Sialkot. The Hindus had to leave their homes and run away. And the Hindus were not satisfied. And see, violence turns uncontrollable and completely ruins the atmosphere of trust and love and solidarity. And this atmosphere is replaced by hatred, disgust, murder, rape, fire, and erosion. Hindus were butchered. People seek shelter to save their lives, but they fail to find shelter. They fail to find a relief. Lala, who was the protagonist, is a wholesale merchant, grain merchant, and he lives in Sialkot. He is an ardent follower of Arya Samaj. He also followed the Indian leaders. He was a nationalist. The writer possessed the nationalist spirit in the character of Lala. The national leader never liked the division of the country. Lala was frightened about the announcement. Himself wanted to become revolutionary when he saw in what manner atrocities were being done to the Hindus. Events are presented through the consciousness of Lala, who becomes a spokesman of the Hindus, who are deeply disturbed by the unprecedented political event. Lala's experience symbolized the pain and sufferings of the millions affected by the announcement. The stories like that, the Sialkot is a Muslim-dominated city. Some Hindus request the police protection. When they heard about the announcement of the partition, they requested that there should be provided police protection. At that time, Muslims organized a procession which arrives near the Trunk Bazaar, near the shop of Lala. And they started to shout the slogans, "Pakistan Jindabad, long live Pakistan." It means they created the atmosphere of fear and terror. On the other hand, Lala was there. Lala advised the youngsters, I quote, "Patience, boys. We do not want to lose our heads. We will let the police handle it for us," unquote. See in what manner Lala Kasiram was requesting the young Hindus that they should wait for the police and they should have patience. On the other hand, the Muslims started to shout that these are the refugees. Lala thought, I quote, "I was born around here. This is my home. How can I be a refugee in my home unquote, see the feelings, the apathy of Lala, that in what manner he was being called refugee. Though he was born there, he lived there, he was doing service of the people, but he was named as a refugee, and he was uh, pained to hear these comments. The writer succeeded in recapturing the most haunting nightmares of the blackest period in the Indian history, the refugees' karma, the atrocities perpetrated on the unoffending, battered, and disapparated dregs of humanity. We can say that humanity was at same at that time. The Muslims tortured the Hindus, and these people were battered, and you can say that in that manner Hindus suffered. The writer further describes how naked women are paraded through streets at Norawala. The writer describes, I quote, they were all stark naked, their heads were completely shaven, looking at the ground, their spirits crushed, their morals shattered. None of them made an attempt to cover themselves with their hands, unquote. See in what manner Hindu women were being paraded in the open streets at Narwala, and see what happens next. I quote the next quotation. I quote, a lone Muslim dragged a woman away from the crowd and kept her for his exclusive use, for his personal use. See in what manner the Muslims started to think about the Hindu women. The rest were subjected to a mass rape, at time in public places, in presence of large gatherings that were the scene of same. The rape was followed by other atrocities, chopping of the wrist and even death. Many of the pregnant women had their womb torn open, unquote. See, in what manner the women were tortured. They were subject to mass rape. It was a very typical situation in the history of India. At the time, Lala prayed that the process should not destroy the lives of Hindus. But there was a police officer, Inayatullah Khan, endangered the lives of the Hindus. They described harmful effects of divisive politics played by the police and the politicians. The writer takes to see the impact of partition on the lovers. Arun and Nurul are studying in the same class, are in request to change her religion. She refuses. He heard him say, why should I become a Muslim? She states, that is, if you will allow me, there is a dilemma in their conversation. The feelings of love were not clear, and there was a state of confusion between the two. She writes a letter to Arun. I quote, I'm weeping when I write this to you. Will I sever you again? God alone knows why people are so full of hate, unquote. Noor's letter has a pessimistic tone of the bleak future. Arun's love is unfulfilled. See how the lovers suffer at the time of participant. They could not fulfill their love. And on the other hand, we see the religious frenzy. At the time, the religious madness reaches to its height. Lala's soap was burnt. Lala came to know about the death of his daughter Madhu and her husband Rajiv. Abdul Khani informs Arun that his sister and her husbands were burnt alive by him. Abdul Ghani was the friend of Arun. He is a close friend of Lala, but the divisive politics make the people hatred for each other. A friend turns into an enemy and kills his daughter. See in what manner it was personal loss to Lala Kasiram. His own daughter was murdered by his friend. That was same to friendship. That was friends, same to the relationship. The writer blames the politics for the division of the country. At the time, Jinnah had become the idol for the Muslims. The Muslims followed him blindly. On the other hand, the slogan of Purn Swaraj is nothing but a complete freedom of the people. The writer throws light on the Barkat Ali's love for Gandhian principle of non-violence. It means there were certain Muslims who also followed the principles of Gandhiji, the principle of non-violence. What happened in the refugee camp? There was Rahmatullah Khan, the classmate of Arun, who wanted to seduce Sudna, the wife of Suraj Prakash. Arun refused to present her. People were tortured and women were raped. And we see later Swanda is abducted and raped by him at Narowala. Rahmat wants to exploit the situation. It was the political fanatism that prevails at that time. We also come to know about the opportunism of Gangu, who changed himself and watches the sufferings of the Hindus as a spectator of the scene. He was Hindu, but he changed himself and see in what manner he was looking at the sufferings of the Hindus. He became a spectator. The writer holds the politician responsible for the division of the country. We can say this novel is not only the story of Lala, but it's the story of millions of people like him. We can also see that in what manner partition resulted in the monstrous Holocaust that ever witnessed in the history. Azadi closes with the affirmation that a nation, what may be, outlives even annihilation tragedies. Thanks. In this manner, the writer describes the agonies, the pains, the sufferings, the atrocities at the time of partition. Thanks.